the social learning that comes from this is that let's start with the victim. The victim of, let's say, a child or a spouse who is being, or a partner who is being abused routinely. That person will show within 5 to 10 years, they will show a distinct reduction in arousal. They will have a tolerance level for extreme arousal, meaning they will play endless computer games that are super high stim. They will be willing to engage in arguments that most people would want to get away from, but in fact, they'll just sit there and go through it. They'll allow their children to go through it because their body chemistry has become adapted, and they are used to functioning with increased blood pressure. They're used to functioning with increased levels of stimulation that they feel has now become normal, that this is what is normative. So when we start to talk about this, we're not just talking about what happens to the person that is experiencing this individually, we're talking about what starts to happen socially. What do we start to do to each other? And how do we then train that to become intergenerational?
And if we take that back to the brain, we know that people that have suffered chronic, severe trauma actually have a physical thinning of hippocampal volume. It actually thins. Okay? And so if hippocampus is time stamping and sorting memories based on various sets of values, that ability to do that starts to become impaired. Okay?
And hippocampal thinning is one of the problems, but the positive side is that hippocampal tissue can also re-thicken.
Well, yes, we're now learning that in treatment. We now know from research that occurred in 2012 that with certain treatments, especially with EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and processing, that sometimes as few as under 25 sessions can increase hippocampal volume as much as 25%. So that certain types of trauma treatment have been demonstrating the increase in that. And that's not to say only EMDR does that. There's research going on now to comparing EMDR, cognitive behavioral, and narrative and other forms of trauma therapy to see whether or not they actually do the very same thing, and they indeed might. We don't know that.
So, for instance, at the Research Institute in Western New York, where I did some work for a while, women who had been living with domestic violence for 8 or 10 years or more, what we would find is that they would have certain symptoms that were consistent. Their MMPIs would show that they had noted bluntedness in affect. They had a limited capacity to express in ways that were really meaningful, so that it seemed as though they were less distressed, when in fact their body and their body chemistry was showing that in fact they were highly distressed. The blood pressure level would be highly raised. They had just become normed out on it. If put on medications, they would often feel as though something was going flat, something was going wrong. They weren't feeling as well. And they actually had to be taught again what it was like to function with normative levels and to find meaning in that. That the meaning didn't have to come from a high degree of drama.
In this idea, Van der Kolk talks about, he's a neuropsychologist, psychiatrist. He talks about the body keeps the score. So the physiology does change with distress and disturbance. We know that. Where there's 40-year Kaiser studies that actually can pretty much predict that based on the type of child abuse, whether it's sex abuse or physical violence or whatever, certain distinctly probable diseases will occur at certain times of your life.
They have it down to the point where they can say if you have 3 of this type of exposures for this period of time, then by age 45, you will have these likely illnesses in the body. If you have 5 or more, then you will begin to show some chronic illnesses.
Including obesity, hypertension, diabetes, these types of things.
And also really progressive diseases that are chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
And if you have 7 or more, they can pretty much guarantee that there are other things that will likely produce toxic, life-ending illnesses.
So when you look at this, just that the body can keep the score this way and that physiology is changed by experience, when you start to look at the nurture versus nature theories, it leaves a huge amount of material continuously up in the air. Now again, we had the 30 years approximately of the idea of the extra, what was it, the Y chromosome, the partial chromosome theory that we had. And we saw that in fact, people with this chromosome were generally tall and sort of gray blue-eyed, and because the studies were done among criminal populations, for a long while we believed that that was possibly a precursor to criminality, if not criminality itself. And we also believed that these were the super males that, were possibly fading out of evolution and so on and so forth, that they were disappearing. And again, we've now come to believe that that just doesn't hold water. On the other hand, there's an article called The Neurobiology of Evil that I was looking at that's measuring amygdala size in criminals and is seeing a correlation between the size of the amygdala, smaller, and criminality. The hypothesis there is that with a smaller amygdala, that facial recognition is limited, and that the person with the so-called smaller amygdala cannot read pain in other people adequately, cannot assess another person's suffering, and therefore may have limited empathy based on the inability to actually perceive accurately emotional expression in other people and read their pain. We're not sure. We don't know. So these are the kind of things that we're really looking at.
This has really very important meanings for what we can do. I'm very much focused on what's the solution. What do we do with this? And the solution, for instance, is that in a forensic environment that in fact is a 24/7 therapeutic environment. This is high level intensity. This is nonstop with highly specially trained staff. Now, staff from all walks of disciplines, but all who come to an agreement that they're going to do interventions in a consistent way. One of the first things that you do is you begin to help people to recognize that their perception, which comes down to, there used to be a very popular theory that was out for a while. It's still popular, just not as often talked about, and that's transactional analysis, which is a communication style, and it's really based on four states, and they are: I'm okay, you're okay; I'm not okay, you're okay; I'm okay, you're not okay; and I'm not okay, and you're not okay. The I'm not okay, you're not okay position is a suicidal, homicidal position. That's criminal. The second one that's criminal is I'm okay and you're not okay.
That's even more likely to be criminal.
That's even more likely to be violent.
You're not okay.
Because it means you step, and I've actually heard this repeatedly. You stepped off the curb, you got in the way of my car, so that's why I hit you.
Yeah. That was your choice.
You're the one who made a bad choice.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything wrong.
I'm basically okay. You're the one that's not okay.
I was driving my car. I was in control, and you didn't know what the hell you were doing.
That's why you got killed. Stupid. Didn't survive.
And that's for real. I mean, I'm talking about really people who feel that. I mean, who really, when they say it, you can feel it's palpable. It's very real. It's not just a heady statement. It's a
belief system.
It's a real, genuine, authentic touch. If I touch you, I can sock you right in the face because the bottom line is you're not right. I'm the one that's right.
I've
That's
got
a
the
very
gun, but I'm going to
dangerous-
put the choice in your hand. And if you don't do as I say, then this person's going to get killed, and it's your fault, right?
What's important about that is that if you understand that, the first therapeutic thing that you do is you begin to teach people how to see that they are misperceiving. You need to correct perception. And perception is that's a starting point in ego state development. What one perceives is what I call the isness of things. It has nothing to do with any way that you think about it. It's like taking a snapshot, bing, snapshot. The isness of that moment is what it is. How you're sitting, what you're looking like, where your hair is, what position you're in, what you're expressing. It is what it is, period. That's perception. You are really working at trying to alter perception and teaching people that there are alternatives to the way they perceive things.
I'm going to take that back to the brain a little bit again and take a look at our ideas about attachment, early attachment, infant, mother, and family, and then later. Stephen Porges, he's also another neuropsychologist, psychiatrist, someone in the mental health profession, who's really taking a really look at the how the brain reads, how the brain processes its own internal stimulation, its own internal state of organ, and how it communicates it to other mammals, other humans, through eye contact, through facial expression, and through the adjustment of my voice, prosody of voice. And what he says is that ability to read our own internal state and communicate that through what he calls polyvagal, the vagus nerve, the polyvagal system, is communicated through that social engagement system through the eyes and the sound and the voice and the facial expression. If we take that back to attachment theory, some of the theories that are talked about, Ruth Lennius talks about this idea that in the infant-mother communication, particularly post 6 months on and so on, the mother's ability to get the infant to smile or not, the mother's ability to communicate a sense of well-being, and also parents, fathers as well, any immediate caretaker of that infant who is communicating through eye, facial expressions, sound of voice, that there's consistency, regularity of feeding and security and so on, communicates that their organ system is okay. And if their organ system is relatively okay, then it must mean by automatic default that the world around the immediate child is also okay too. So that okayness is being taught in early attachment theory, or conversely, not okayness. If the mother is or father is dysregulated, upset, and is communicating low-frequency predator sound, jaws, bump, 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 bump. Dad walks in, says hello, and the baby bursts into tears. And he goes, "What did I do?" Low-frequency vibration of voice communicates predator sound. Conversely, mother speaks soft. "How are you, sweetie? How you doing? Are you okay?" Mama speak communicates automatically to the nervous system safety. Okay? So that core sense of well-being, that position, life script as you're calling it, or the life position, that ego state life position, is programmed initially in childhood by attachment. And perhaps that part of the brain is being, we believe, programmed up to about age 12. And the part of the brain that gets trained by stable and secure attachment is the part of the brain that Ruth Lennius calls the brain default mode network. And what does that mean? If you let off the gas, stop thinking, stop acting, the default position is to idle. Where attachment, stable attachment, is not transferred, the brain doesn't automatically idle when you let off action or the gas. It doesn't go into an idle mode. And if you can't idle automatically or don't know how to idle on your own efforts, just like a standard shift, you also can't change your emotional state. You can't shift gears. which means you independently within your own self cannot change your emotional states on command. You become dependent on the environment to change your emotional states. If you're mad, you're stuck on mad, and you made me mad. And if you're sad, you're stuck on sad, and you made me sad. If I'm giddy and happy, I'm stuck on happy, and you made me happy. So one, I'm going to be very much potentially dependent on substances to regulate my states. Okay, alcohol and substances. I'm going to be dependent on manipulating my environment to change my internal state. And my perception of the locus of control and all that is you, not me. It's your fault. You control all that. You made me feel that way. Not me. I don't have any ability to control that. So you see the external, the locus of responsibility and control is trained outwardly. So simply poor or disrupted attachment can create that state of position that I'm okay or not okay, and the world is either okay or not okay, and that the interaction between the two of us is a reciprocal responsibility, or what we call that social responsibility. And that won't be there if that attachment's disrupted.